Birthday.
This video we're about to react to is by what the emergency. Oh shit. I need to start paying attention. This video we're about to react to is by Emergency and it's titled Gen Z Sucks at Friendship and It's Only Getting Worse. Now let's see what they're referring to, in which I picked this one because hey, I already got a lot of friends. Um and let's see what I can add to this, honestly. Let's see the takeaways, what can be added to this.
Gen Z is still having a problem building community, and I fear that things aren't quite getting better. Hey guys, what's up? It's Emergency and welcome back to my channel. Today we are back and we're talking again about friendship, the loneliness epidemic, and more specifically for this video, community and the essence and concept of building community, because I think that's been a really buzzy topic recently, especially in light of everything that Gen Z and young people in general have been going through in the world and in the culture, whether that be things with world news, the ongoing loneliness epidemic in youth, or just trying to find a greater sense of purpose outside of the typical 9-to-5 churn and burn. It really seems that regardless of whatever you're really going through or whatever thing in the world is getting you down and feeling isolated and alone, the catch-all buzzword that's being thrown at us left and right as like this one-size-fits-all solution is community, and the heavy encouragement to seek it, find it, and create it. And that is amazing because there is historical precedent for like the importance of having community and what that is generally supposed to look like if we look at older generations. But it seems like for us, by and large, we just don't know how to do that. In fact, a lot of behaviors, outlooks, perspectives that we are kind of socialized to have, and ones that have been normalized and promoted, especially on social media, kind of do the opposite of building community and friendship. I'm thinking of things like hyper-independence, the art of detachment, the concept of not owing anybody anything, and the whole personality trait of being nonchalant, or the concept of nonchalance in general. We're statistically the loneliest generation to date, and it's important to understand where we're going wrong and what we can do to really fix it. And that's what we're getting into in this video. We need to talk about building community and maintaining solid friendships because they are, at the end of the day, very healthy for us. And since we're on the topic of general health, let's take a second to talk about this video sponsor, AG1. AG1 is a research-backed daily health drink that combines a multivitamin, a probiotic, about community, because community is genuinely so important to a sense of belonging, to a sense of fulfillment, and also just having a social bubble. Whether you have a community in real life or you have a community online, kind of like what we got going on over here. Also, oh yeah, I did forget to say, like, if you're new to our little community, definitely subscribe to stay in it, and follow me on my socials on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Emergency to maintain that social contract. Right. But when we talk about community and specifically building community, we need to really define what exactly we mean by it. According to an article from the Stanford Social Innovation Review talking about what is community anyway, very timely, very current. The article's authors, David Chavez and Kian Lee, say that community is not a place, a building, or an organization, nor is it an exchange of information over the internet. Community is both a feeling and a set of relationships among people. People form and maintain communities to meet common needs. And how we've seen this as Gen Z usually be modeled for us is either through our parents in the communities that they had and brought us up in, whether that be a group of family, friends, neighbors, just staying an active part in each other's lives, helping out with day-to-day things, coming and showing up to different parties, events, gatherings, celebrations. And for those of us whose parents didn't model a good sense of community, I feel like a lot of the mainstream media that we consumed growing up also modeled some sense of community. As unserious as this may sound, a lot of the shows that we grew up on Nickelodeon and Disney did really focus on groups of people, like groups of friends that really had a strong sense of community, whether that be things like Victorious, iCarly, Sweet Life on Deck, or I know this isn't a Gen Z thing, but if you grew up with an older sense of taste, then Sex and the City, Insecure, or many other shows that really were community based. They're based around this group of people that has common interests and needs, going through events and life together that strengthen and test bonds. And I think that that sense of community has really been lost recently.
I went to a wedding yesterday and I was able to see a lot of like my old church members. Now, these are the church members I had when I first moved to Houston. And I was talking to some friends at the table. And one was telling me how her mom has been running around all morning long for fabric and this and cups. And I don't know, something about that just made me realize that our parents, they did community. As in, I don't think we could even touch, when it comes to community, we can't touch them. Because really they needed each other, so they really didn't have a choice. You're in a whole new country, you don't really know anyone. And so I began to think, what about those? I feel like these days we don't really emphasize the importance of community because we feel like we don't really need each other. Like I remember growing up, someone would have a celebration and you'll go to the backyard, all the aunties are just, they're in the kitchen cooking. The only community we know is to go and be doing brunch. We don't even really come together and cook. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just a little cheesy. And a lot of times I feel like we don't like being inconvenienced. And so to even go and do for someone is almost like pulling teeth. We're building community online, but in real life, everybody just going their own way. So it's like, where's the village? All I know is I plan on being more intentional about community because it's important. How will our children grow together?
Having friends and a community.
This is what I can say about the community thing. Not everybody can be in your community because you can put in a decent amount of effort. There's other people who depend on the amount of effort that you put in. And you're expecting the same thing when they're not giving or they're not planning to give the same amount of energy, effort into the community. Take that also into friendships, any type of relationships. You gotta match the energy, match the effort, not just take. It's aligning and strengthening relationships. So if you're in your single isolation season, because there's been people who you thought were a community who aren't really your community, they were just take, give a little bit, but take, because your spirit would let you know. And you'll think it's a you thing, but no, it's a them thing. Your community are the people who are like you, who will give, will not want to take, but they're going to give anyway. And y'all all going to give and be willing to give to each other because y'all know y'all are going to build together.
Community keeps us healthy and is important for so many other reasons. There are a number of communities outside of friendships and relationships, like coworkers, neighbors, volunteer groups, faith-based groups, interest groups, to name a few. And the real value of having community is that it provides us with a sense of purpose and belonging. It could also aid in our personal and professional goals and development, with you constantly getting exposed to new ideas and ways of thinking outside of your own. It also allows you a way to alleviate stress, because you have that network of people that you can talk to that are there to support you, in theory, in moments of stress or crisis that you don't have to pay for, i.e. a therapist. Although I do highly recommend still having a therapist. And finally, and almost more importantly, it can help you build those social skills, because communication is the most important aspect in community building. You can't really build a community if you're not willing to communicate or talk. And that's often where we see a lot of communities or attempts at finding community fail, with improper, faulty, inconsistent, or just general bad communication. Like, speaking personally, I've been really grateful over the past couple of months to find and build upon my own sense of community. If y'all have been keeping up with the Broomy/emergency lore, you know that I started running last year, joined a run club, did the whole thing, and eventually found a group of people through that run club to start building community with. And I really feel like through all those things I just listed from psychology today, I feel those things very deeply, because those are all things that community can and does provide. But none of this is to say that this is easy to do by any means, actually. And we're going to talk about that, because finding and building this community is notoriously hard to do as an adult, especially an adult in today's social climate. And you may ask, why specifically is that? Like, why is it so hard to build community? Like, you don't already know and live it. Just follow along for the sake of the video, okay? Why do people not know how to build community with each other? Well, I'd argue that one of the main reasons why we see so many people have such a hard time finding community, despite really wanting or feeling like they want that form of connection and belonging, is what I like to call the bad friend epidemic in Gen Z culture. And what this means is kind of what I alluded to a little bit earlier in the video, is that there are a lot of personality traits and a lot of beliefs and preconceived notions about friendship and community in young people, especially within Gen Z, that are and have become popular based on social media and general culture, that are conducive to creating bad friends or bad friendships. Like I said before, things that really encourage hyper-individualism, whether that be the rise of therapy speak in everyday relationships, the extremes of the if they wanted to, they would mentality for both friendships and relationships, the concept of not owing anyone anything, not even your mother, and more really contribute to this. Now, I will say, being a victim of or a contributor to the bad friend epidemic doesn't inherently make you a bad person or necessarily even a bad friend. They're just a series of traits that do not make building friendships or a community any easier. And let's talk more about these things. First, to start off, I think this thing sort of falls under all the rest of the things that I'm about to talk about, so we're going to lead with it, and that is the fatal flaw theory. Now, this is not something that I made up at all. This has been a very popular theory on TikTok, at least since like 2021, but the greater concept of the fatal flaw theory has been going back for centuries, actually. And this theory is sort of in response to the nature for us as young people to be really quick to cut people off without much conversation or understanding. Like feeling that a friend did something that offended or annoyed you, and without really working it out, you just like cut them off. And with the fatal flaw theory,
Look, I've had that. I'm not even gonna cap and say I haven't had that. I've had that. Mine was more of along the lines of loyalty. If we don't align, or if you do something that fucks me over, then there's no explanation. I'm cutting you off. You know what you did. I'm not gonna explain to you so you can think of a lie to tell me or what? Nah, bro. Now, like I said, over time I've gotten better with that, and like even my last couple friendships, I've told them, hey, and I didn't have to. It was just me growing and taking accountability and understanding like, hey, that's a trauma response. I was gonna cut you off because this is how I felt. And I was moving towards that. But I believe that I owe y'all a conversation just so we can all get it out in the open to let you know how I felt about certain stuff that you guys weren't contributing that I am. It feels like it's uneven. I feel like, and that's what I believe that's what builds and strengthened our relationship. Now, if it's I told you what I felt and you said you understand, you'll do better, and you aren't doing it, then it's like, okay, now it's I guess it's to fuck me and fuck my feelings. It's okay, that's cool. If that's how you feel. But that's how I move accordingly. If it's a fuck me, it's a fuck you.
Suggests is that everyone has a fatal flaw, whether it's being late, whether it's being messy, both messy.
Clock that T. Clock it. Clock that T. Clock it. Clock that T.
And cluttery, messy, essentially quirks or things about people that are character flaws. And the theory suggests that once you discover what your friend's fatal flaw is, in that moment you have to decide whether or not that's something you can live with. And once you decide, yeah. And if you do decide that your friend's character flaw is something that you can live with, you essentially relinquish the right to get mad at it, to harbor resentment for it, or to try and change that person, because you are essentially at that point just accepting them for who they are. And if they do change on their own, then great. If not, that is still something that you can live with, and
Have you heard of the fatal flaw theory? In psychology and ancient literature, there's a theory that states that in every relationship that you are ever going to have, there will be a fatal flaw. And that character flaw or personality trait may sabotage your relationship. General examples of this could be pride, lack of self-awareness, impulsiveness, poor communication skills. The fatal flaw majority of the time is not being done maliciously, and it's going to be different for every single individual.
Maybe I lied. Maybe I don't have that. Maybe I didn't have that. Maybe I'm just so real and genuine. I just can't be around other motherfuckers who just are just on bullshit. Because I can see through it. I can just see through the bullshit. I can see through it. I'll give you the chance to clear it up and do better. But if I see that you're not doing better and you don't want to do better, then I'm not wasting my time on you. Because obviously you don't give a fuck about the shit that I said, because I truly care about you and care about this relationship. And I care about me. I care about me first and how I feel. But obviously you don't, which is cool. I'm not taking back what I said earlier, but it's like now I understand what the fatal flaw theory is. This is my first time hearing about it. And man, if I see one of my buddies got a fatal flaw or something I can't fuck with, hey bro, you need to change this shit. If not, because this is gonna hinder you, and eventually it's probably gonna go towards me. Not doing that. Because they do something. If they do something to somebody else, what makes you think they're not going to do it to you?
Now here's the thing, we're all walking around with our own fatal flaws that have been unchecked. And for us personally, those fatal flaws may not make a huge impact on our day-to-day lives, but they do show up in our relationships. Let's make it real and imagine that you have a friend who's always late. And if you don't have a friend that's always late, you're the friend that's always late. You've argued about it over and over and over again. You've talked about it on multiple different occasions. Why can't you just be on time? Every time this happens, they apologize. But the problem with people being late is you're not just mad at the fact that they're late, you're mad at the fact that they don't respect your time.
Facts.
Now you've attached a deeper meaning to this behavior. Eventually, after time and time again of them being late, their excuse is now going to be, this is just who I am. It's their flaw.
This is more of a rule than a theory, but I think that every single one of your close or best friends has a fatal flaw. Maybe they're insecure, maybe they're really attention seeking around boys. Whatever it is, once you identify it, you have to accept it. When I was growing up, I had this friend and she was a liar. The lie.
Nah, bro, you don't have to accept shit, bro. You don't have to accept it. Because that makes it seem like, okay, that's just like saying, that's just like saying with your grandparents, that's just them because they're old age. I've been like this my whole life. Just accept it. No, if you're a nasty individual, you can be that by yourself, but not with me. If you're gonna be talking shit about people, if you're gonna be late to my shit, if you're gonna be not paying attention while we're having a conversation, just how I am. I get ADHD. Bruh, I've seen you stare down, or I've seen you play the game for 2-3 hours without moving your eyes somewhere else, bro. Like, that's bullshit. You know that. You just don't give a fuck. So just admit you just don't give a fuck. And that's cool. We can go on our merry way. You do not have to accept it. Now, it's either you address it, say, hey, this is how I've been feeling, and I feel like you don't give a fuck about me, or I feel like this is gonna, if it doesn't change, or if I don't see any change, I'm gonna have to grow. I'm gonna have to grow without you. And if you don't see any change, don't say nothing. Just grow. You don't have to accept it. Don't accept it, because you're accepting mediocrity. You're not being a good friend if you don't challenge your friend to be better, and if they're not challenging you to be better. And then you're actually growing. Because if you tell somebody something about themselves that can help them grow, help them do better, help them be better, and they're not doing it, that's in turn showing you, hey, I'm gonna give a rat's ass about your opinion. I'm gonna be who I am gonna be, and people are gonna accept me, whether you like it or not. Okay, well, you're gonna be mediocre. You're not willing to. Cause if they can't accept a little critique, what makes you think they can accept something else? Or say they do accept it from somebody else, but not from you. What is that to say? That your word don't mean shit to them.
This didn't hurt anybody, but they were big lies. And I would complain to my mom about it all the time. And eventually she was like, enough. If this is part of her personality, you have to accept it, or don't be friends with her anymore. And so was born my rule. Once you identify your close friend's fatal flaw, anytime it flares up, you can't be triggered by it, because you have to accept that that's their fatal flaw. And if the fatal flaw bothers you enough, then you have to demote them to a less close friend. The silliest thing is if you are consistently triggered by your friend's fatal flaw. Either accept it or demote them, or you'll drive yourself crazy.
Now, I know when hearing that you may have had like a knee-jerk reaction, being like, why would I put up with behavior that I don't personally agree or align with? Like, if I don't want to deal with all that, I'm just going to drop them as a friend. And that is what the fatal flaw theory looks to challenge. It's essentially a pathway to just meeting people where they are and coming to an understanding. Like, I know you're not perfect. I'm not perfect either, because everyone has a fatal flaw. Everyone. But coming to an understanding of like what you're willing to deal with or put up with, I think is one of the foundational steps to building quality friendships and building that community. Because it kind of pushes that friendship and that relationship closer to something that's more unconditional and stable. And I feel like this point specifically is something that I'm not 100% committed to, of like how I feel friendships and community should go, because I think that the concept of like unconditional love and support is certainly one of the flaws of older generations, where, especially in the Black community, once you're kind of in that community, you're no longer necessarily held accountable, where a lot of really bad stuff that people do end up getting swept under the rug, and those people are still able to stay in said community even if they've caused harm to people in said community, where there is like that sense of like unconditional love or protection that's afforded to those people when there should be some accountability held there. So again, I'm not 100% committed to like that point specifically yet. I don't know how I feel about that. I think it would be interesting if our generation did get a hold on community building really well, how we would interpret that, because I think that that's something that we do value a little bit more. But this is all to segue, and this may or may not be a very large segue into the conversation of the concept of owing people things. There's been this strong push online, especially recently, towards the concept that like you as an individual don't owe anybody anything. You don't owe strangers anything, you don't owe friends, family anything, whether that be explanations for behavior, owing people grace, owing yourself to be inconvenienced by others, like this general sense that like you don't owe people anything, and that anything that you do give to other people is a privilege. And to that I say, again, this is an example of perhaps a little bit of therapy speak, or a very niche and situational statement and sentiment being widely blown out of proportion, where it almost gets to a point where it's like kind of giving like no social skills. Because in my opinion, yes, you do owe people at least a very baseline of communication, kindness, respect, and empathy. I don't really think that those are things that are owed to people. And I'd say that they're kind of more so just like basic social skills to building solid friendships and community. Especially and almost most importantly, when you're building those new friendships and joining or initially building a community. And I think that this sentiment of not owing people anything has inadvertently translated a bit into people just like not really showing up to and for each other because they can. And as an addendum to that, people are also uncomfortable with letting people or giving people the chance to learn how they can show up for them. In order to build a solid community, you need to be okay with being inconvenienced. You need to be okay with even being annoyed with people sometimes.
Everything in life doesn't have to be point A to point B. That is literally purposeless, and you miss a lot along the way. But everybody wants to have friends that are ride or dies, or they can go on trips with, or to hang out with, and whatever the but no one wants to do the work to become friends and become better friends. Think of it like The Sims. You can't do certain things until you level up in the relationship. Having a night out with your girlfriends? Yeah, that'll come up. Oh, we're gonna hang out on a weekday? Okay, a little bit more. Okay. That is how relationships are built. You can't just expect people to go from 0 to 1,000. That's crazy.
And people, when I say people, I mean especially Gen Z, don't want to be inconvenienced by friends, and also at the same time are afraid to be an inconvenience to friends. There are multiple TikToks of people joking about how, where they borderline want to crash out when a friend calls them unprompted because it's always at the wrong time.
Sometimes I actually get a little irritated when I get a phone call because A, you're calling me and I don't subscribe to that, and B, you're actually interrupting the only reason I have a phone, which is to scroll social media. And now I have to sit there and wait for your call to ring all the way through before I can return to that because I don't want it to seem like I'm ignoring you, even though I am.
Yeah, that's just being a bitch. I ain't gonna count it, just being a bitch. All you have to do is pick up the phone. Hey, I'm not really trying to be on the phone right now. I'll call you back when I call you back. It's your phone. You pay the bill. Instead, you just, oh, let me hide behind and not even answer. There's times I do that shit. Well, not to my friends, though. I don't be doing that to my friends. There's people I don't want to talk to. I just don't answer the phone. And then I just go ahead and text them. What's up? You need something? Because you're not getting my energy from my voice. Plus, I'm probably listening to my sermons and shit like that. Like, I could text you. You don't need to hear my voice. I know it's luscious. I know it's beautiful. I know it's soothing. I know it's amazing. It's a symphony. But you're not entitled to that. You gotta earn that.
But then when they themselves are in need, are afraid to call anyone because they don't want to be a burden, so they just suffer in silence. And that aversion or fear of being inconvenienced doesn't fully benefit either party. And I hate saying this because I hate giving boomers and Gen X their props because you know they're ready to rise up at a moment's notice. But a hard truth we can learn from them is that in order to have a strong sense of community, or just a community in general, is that to be a community member or to be a good friend is to also be inconvenienced from time to time, and to also be okay and willing to do that. That means things like picking up or dropping off friends to the airport, waiting a little longer, or compromising to do something with friends as opposed to doing it alone, bringing friends things.
My thing is, if y'all see that as an inconvenience, then y'all really don't even want friends for real. Cause I don't even see like picking up and dropping off people at the airport. I'm alright with doing that. It's not an inconvenience. Like
things when they're sick or feeling down, or
I think I'm just a giver. I'm just a different type of individual because that's not even inconvenient for me. Like if I can do it, I'm going to do it.
or just being around them as a support when they're feeling down, or even more importantly, when they're not at their lowest, just being around people, just to name a few things. And I really think one of the worst things to hit the Gen Z lexicon, the Gen Z, and honestly millennial for this too, zeitgeist, was therapy speak. Like therapy speak really hit the streets harder than you know what in the 80s. Now, what is therapy speak? Because I've said it like 4 or 5 times in this video already. Therapy speak is the incorrect use of jargon from psychology, especially jargon related to psychotherapy and mental health. It tends to be linguistically prescriptive and formal in tone. It includes misusing terms outside of those settings, like gaslighting and narcissist, and the misuse of the word boundary. And the end effect of therapy speak is that it allows people to avoid accountability for their actions and behaviors. An example of this is when you go to a friend to tell them about a terrible day you've been having, and they tell you that they're not your therapist and they feel like you're trauma dumping on them, when you're actually just telling them about how your boss was being an a-hole. Which again, this isn't to invalidate like actual instances of things like trauma dumping and establishing those boundaries. But I think with what's happened with therapy speak is that these terms and the connotation with these terms have been brought out of and stretched so far out of their initial meaning that in many cases it's now being used as a way and to avoid holding space for people that are supposed to be close to you, which then creates more distance and friction in friendships, and also inherently devalues the actual seriousness of people that are genuinely going through things like that. Another example being like, instead of apologizing for a lack of communication, someone will say like, oh, I'm just avoidant, which again, not saying that that also can't be true, but saying that kind of absolves you from the accountability of just saying like, I'm sorry for the lack of communication. And that brings us back to the concept of not owing people things. It's a misuse of boundaries and the healthy ways to generally set them. People not owing each other things is transcended into the idea that friends are not obligated to do things for you, which has made relationships very transactional. Instead of genuinely doing these things out of kindness because they're friends, and that is what people do when they're friends. And this brings us to another way that community seems to be lost with us.
And this is my thing too, because I've had this conversation with my friends. I said, look, I don't want it to be, and I'm not making it to be transactional with the shit that I do. But I feel like I'm not getting the same reciprocal type of things that I'm doing. Like I'm not getting that reciprocated. So it's hard to not see it as transactional when I'm not. The energy I'm putting into this, I feel like I'm not receiving that same type of energy. I match energy. That's just how I am. If that's my fatal flaw, I'd rather have that type of fatal flaw. But I can also take accountability for if I'm acting like a bitch. I'm acting like a bitch. You acting like a bitch right now. Okay, cool. House up. This is how you acting like a bitch. Yeah, you're right. But none of my friends have said that. I can take self accountability. A lot of my friends really can't. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. That's a lie. My friends who know they can, they've taken accountability.
And that is the way that we just be canceling plans. Guilty! I think canceling plans has become such a popular thing. I mean, it's always been a thing. I don't want to make it seem like Gen Z invented it. But the ways in which people have started canceling plans and the time duration between when the plans were made, when they are, and when the cancellation happens has been getting slimmer and slimmer. And I think that we really need to talk about that. Namely, social media and texting make it easier than ever to cancel plans because there's less face-to-face interaction, there's less pressure. You're not telling someone to their face, hey, sorry, I don't want to come to your thing, which ties into the online disinhibition effect, which we talked about, I believe, in the second to last video, talking about how people are meeting on the internet. Essentially, the online disinhibition effect, to summarize, is that people act differently online than they would if they were face-to-face to you in real life. People feel less guilty and feel like it's easier to cancel plans over the phone, especially when those plans are last minute, because they don't have to physically see or speak to the person they're canceling on. And in my notes here, I have that people attribute last minute cancellations to social anxiety. So being anxious of like disappointing people or like canceling last minute because you know you're dead ass wrong. And again, I'm not saying this is like a holier than thou sort of thing. I've done this. I actually think I did like a super last minute cancellation last week.
I know I've done it. Can't remember the last time and why I've done it, but I'm trying to think. I don't often cancel plans though, because I respect people's time and I respect my time. If we got some shit going and we both agreed, you better be there. You better give me a very damn good reason why it ain't you're not gonna be there. Because I would do that same thing.
And again, this is definitely an issue. The call is also coming from inside the house here. But canceling plans hurts us socially. It's one of the reasons why people don't want to throw anything anymore. We talked during the holiday season about how we don't really...
I don't cancel plans. There's other people that cancel plans on me. That's the shit that I hate. That's the shit that I hate. That's how I'm like, bro, you know what? At first, I used to fuck up my shit, my day, or fuck up like my type of vibe, my energy. But now it's like, you know what? Cool. I'm not gonna let you ruin my energy, ruin my vibe. Fuck you.
We have traditions anymore, and we don't throw as many parties and celebrations and gatherings. Well, one of the reasons why that is because people are afraid, rightfully so, that no one is going to show up for them, because that's been proven to be the case more often than not. The person who gets their plans canceled on them feels hurt because it essentially feels like a loss, and psychologically actually affects them. And the people who cancel last minute are generally seen as unreliable and oftentimes don't get invited out again. According to a Harper's Bazaar article, if someone cancels on us, it's
be like, why didn't you invite me? Why didn't you invite me? The last 3 or 4 times I invited you, you never came. You flaked. That's why I haven't invited you. But then you see my shit on social media, and then you want to throw a little bitch fit. That's why. Why would I invite somebody? I'm not going to keep putting my hand out for you to smack it. No.
still affects the brain like a social pain or psychological threat to our safety. Something called loss aversion means that we are twice as affected by a perceived loss than an equivalent gain. So getting bailed on feels much worse when we are on the receiving end than it does when we do it to someone else. It is important to use empathy to imagine how you would feel and respond if someone bailed on you before you decide to do it to them. And I think that that's very real. I think oftentimes when we want to cancel plans it's because we don't feel like it or because something came up after the fact, but really unless it is a crazy extenuating circumstance, like if you did commit to going and showing up to these things, you should do everything in your power to show up. Even if it does happen that you show up late, like showing up is better than not showing up at all. And research shows that when it comes to planned cancellations and not wanting to go to things, the pandemic really did have a strong effect on us socially. It hindered a lot of people's social skills, especially for Gen Z, because many, if not all of us, were going through developmental stages socially during the lockdown eras and during the time where things were heavily socially distanced. I know now it's 2025 and that era is around 3 to 5 years ago, and it's shown to still have an effect on us because when we were impacted, many of us were still learning to socialize through college, high school, middle school, even elementary school. We missed out on a lot of that. During that era, people got used to being isolated and not having to hear other people's opinions and thoughts if they didn't want to, which could contribute to why some people feel like they don't owe people anything. In a quote from the Baylor College of Medicine, during the pandemic, people were able to focus more on their own ideas without hearing from outside perspectives. Some people may experience difficulty when dealing with others who have different opinions than their own, which can contribute to the lack of genuine community and friendship building. Another thing that ties into this next point is similar to what I was talking about before, but the general fact that people now are canceling for things for no good reason. It's not because they have a emergency or something that popped up. They just don't want to go. And because of this whole we don't owe people anything, that for some people is a valid enough reason just to not show up because they don't feel like it. And again, it is within your right to not go because you don't feel like it, or not show up because you don't feel like it, but you have to acknowledge that those actions do come with consequences. And the consequence to that is access to quality friendships and community. You're not going to build friendships. You're not going to build community with people if you only show up when you want to show up. And that just speaks to the lack of social etiquette that we are establishing as a generation. A problem that's been seen on internet discourse on things like Reddit, TikTok, and Twitter is that people generally lack social traditions and feel personally victimized or attacked when instructions for social events are given. Like not following dress codes at weddings, not following themes at parties. There was one Reddit thread of someone not wanting to get gifts from a gift registry for someone's wedding or baby shower because they didn't like to be told what to buy. And there were a bunch of people under that thread that also agreed. Other things like showing up to people's housewarming parties empty-handed. And while all these things may sound small or like trivial, like in the grand scheme of everything on earth, does it matter that you didn't get something for your friend's housewarming gift? Or does it matter that you didn't dress in theme for a themed party? No. But again, when we talk about things like community, part of being in community is agreeing to take part in the social norm of said group and community. And if it isn't already established that like, yeah, in our group, in our community, it doesn't matter if you're dressing up in theme, it doesn't matter if you get a gift at my homecoming thing or not, then you are still technically breaking that social contract, which then does affect the strength of said.
And this is what I can say about that. Everybody has their own type of conditions and I guess social bylaws when it comes to their friends and shit like that. When it comes to parties and shit like that, bro, I could give a fuck less about gifts. As long as you come, bring great energy, have a great time, cool. If you want to bring something, bring something. If you don't, cool. I'm a grown man, I'm good. Yeah, if you want to bring something, cool. If you don't, you don't have to. I know if I'm showing up to a party or something like that, I'm not showing up empty-handed. But there's times I will show up empty-handed if they already got shit. Because my people, they be like, hey, actually, no, I really don't show up empty-handed. But I'll bring like a bottle of tequila, I'll bring a bottle of bourbon, or something that they like, a bottle of wine and shit. Like, yeah, when it comes to parties and shit. But I really don't care about that. And if it's a theme party, I'm going all out for that theme party. So, but the weddings and shit like that, the weddings I've been to, I've got, if they had a registry, I'd go ahead and order from the registry. Order the cheapest things, I'd order from the registry just so they can have something for the wedding. I really couldn't care about that. But for mine, yeah, I want to order, they can. If not, I don't care.
Bond or said group. People have also been going viral online for very last minute cancellations or just general no-shows to important occasions, life events, and celebrations for friends or people that you think are close to you. Like no one showing up to friends' birthday parties, general celebration parties, or even friends' baby showers.
Don't mind me just crashing out in my bathroom, getting the tears out an hour before my baby shower. This is why I hate celebrating myself. People are like, oh, you never do anything for your birthday. This is the thought. Canceling a week before, classy. Canceling the morning of, questionable. Canceling an hour before is diabolical. To a pregnant woman, yeah, maybe it's the hormones, or maybe I'm just a human that's really tired of people being inconsiderate.
The video of Bria crying an hour before her baby shower because people were texting her to let her know that they would not be able to make it made me feel so bad and is really an indicator of the fact that social contracts are just being broken left and right. There is no sense of responsibility towards one another anymore. And it is part of the reason why so many people are wondering where their community is and seeking community, but they are unwilling to do what is necessary in order to build community and be in community with others.
And this is kind of where I want to talk about men really quickly. Men specifically, there is a ton of content online about the male loneliness epidemic and how it's more so socially acceptable / normalized, or even like throw things for each other the way that mixed gender friend groups or women's friend groups do. Like there are TikToks online from guys' girlfriends talking about how they feel bad because none of the guys' friends showed up to the birthday party or none of the guys' friends showed up to the bar, whatever, what have you. I know that this isn't the case for everybody. There are definitely still male friend groups that do show up and celebrate for each other, but like the culture of like the male loneliness epidemic of like having your friends but not really having friends, or having people that really get you for real, for one, I think has to do with the level of vulnerability, especially when it comes to expressing the fact that like you want your friends to show up for you for your birthday or your housewarming, or if you have like a promotion or like anything. But yeah, we've talked enough about how we as a generation really struggle.
Hell yeah, I've definitely felt that. Showing up for my people, but them not showing up for me in the ways that I've felt some type of way, and I told them that I feel that some type of way. Oh, I'm sorry. Fuck your sorries. Show with your actions. Either they're gonna show with their actions or they don't. So I just take that and move accordingly.
With building that community. Let's talk a bit about like how we can help circumvent that and build said community. And the simple answer to that is just show up for people. But I know like that's very broad advice that doesn't necessarily help anybody. But we really need to be more comfortable with being honest with each other and being more okay with being inconvenienced by people that we care about. Like relationships, whether they're platonic or romantic, aren't going to be great like 100% of the time. Like you're not going to feel super happy all the time. And that's not you settling, that's you building a strong relationship. Because at the end of the day, the anticipation of showing up to this event or coming out to help out a friend or like picking up a friend may not feel great, and you may dread that and you may feel inconvenienced by that. But more often than not, if they're genuinely your friend, when you actually get there, when you actually spend time with them, when you actually hang out with them, and after you hang out with them, you're going to feel good because that's someone you're spending time with that you genuinely love. And that can be the nice thing that you get out of the experience if that's sort of more your vibe. Like what you're getting out of helping out your friend is the fact that helping out people and helping out people that you care about feels good. I also think it's important to establish which boundaries and other things are people actually not owed. Like for example, physical boundaries. If you or someone doesn't like being touched, then you or they don't owe people hugs. And there's nothing inherently rude about that. Being honest about time boundaries, making it clear even if you don't want to go to something, like, yeah, you can still show up or you're going to go, but prefacing it being like, oh, I can't stay very long. Or if you're going to be late, being like, hey, I'm going to be there, but I'm going to be late. Like really communicating that. And honestly, it's not just Gen Z, because this can be applicable to every generation, but especially us as Gen Z, because we are navigating the early adulthood years. We really need to be intentional and clear about what we mean when we say that we want to build community. What we mean when we say we want to have friends. Do we want to have community on our own time, or do we want to have quality, true, and authentic friendships and groups of people to rely on? Because despite what media or things in the world may say, life is a lot easier when you have people you can depend on and when you have a community to back you. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video, y'all. I think I've yapped enough. Now I want to hear from you. Do you feel like you have a good group of friends or a good sense of community? If not, how have you been looking for it? And do you see yourself at all in any of the things that we've talked about in this video? This has been a less like research hard facts video and more so just like a vibe of us talking about the things that have been going on culturally with our generation. So I'd love to hear your candid thoughts. But yeah, y'all, again, thanks so much for watching. Again, if you're new, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like, follow me on my socials on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter.
Shout out to Emergency. That was a dope video. I'm definitely gonna subscribe to the brother.